Our first question goes, does Luang Por have any advice for practitioners on the correct way to practice metta, loving kindness meditation? Some say that to practice metta, one must first start with metta towards oneself, with the thought of goodwill accompanying a feeling of well-being. Then loving kindness should be directed towards those who are friendly towards oneself, then towards neutral people, then metta should be radiated towards difficult people, and finally towards all beings. Does Ajahn have any other advice? And is it okay to solely practice metta meditation without practicing any mindfulness of breathing, vipassana, etc.? Sadhu.
In the beginning, it's certainly okay just to develop metta meditation on its own, if that's what you find inspires you. We have to find meditation objects that we're willing to commit to and put effort into developing over and over again. Because meditation, it's a repetitive process, and ideally you're practicing meditation every day. Ideally, maybe many times a day, but at least once a day for a layperson. So you want a meditation object that you're happy with. So if your mind is attracted to, inspired by the object of metta, well, you can use that. Really, you're bringing your mind to the point where it's just completely absorbed in the thought or the object of goodwill, loving kindness. So that means there's no room for any ill will. The opposite of loving kindness is ill will, aversion. That's your goal. So if you've achieved your goal, your mind is one-pointed on the object of metta, goodwill. Doesn't matter who you're with or where you are, that metta will be established and consistent and continuous. So even if you were to meet someone who's unpleasant or frightening or would in the previous times maybe have made you angry or unhappy in some way, now that your metta is established, the aim is that you get to the point where it's just unshakable. You maintain metta even with people you don't like, people who've hurt you, animals and creatures that may be scary or unpleasant, ugly. That's the goal. But to get to that point, you obviously have to take a step-by-step process. So it's very hard to have goodwill towards people who've hurt you at first, because your metta is maybe not yet strong. It's easily shaken. And as soon as you think of people you don't like or have hurt you in some way, then you might go to anger or fear. Same with animals and bugs and things. So that's why we, generally speaking, start with ourselves, because naturally we love ourselves more than anyone else, whether we admit it or not, whether we realize or not. It's like the king. Which king was it? King Basenadi and his wife asked his wife, the queen, who do you love most in the world? And because he's a very vain, arrogant king, he thought she was going to say him. And she said, I love myself. And that made him angry. So he obviously didn't have his metta established yet. And he went to the Buddha later and said, she said she loves herself more than me. Is that right? And the Buddha said, yeah, of course it's right. Human beings love themselves most. It's just part of our attachment, part of our karma. However, when you practice metta meditation, it is correct. Most people should begin with themselves and try to establish goodwill, because it's in your body and mind, your set of 5 khandhas, that you're developing metta, isn't it? So you start within yourself, and then later you develop this thought or object going out to other people. So naturally you start with yourself, but occasionally somebody through their karma maybe have a lot of self-aversion. They've made a lot of mistakes, done a lot of bad things, and to think of themselves with goodwill is too difficult at first. They're just not ready. So occasionally it is correct to think of other people first. People that you find inspiring or easy to love. So it could be a parent, grandparent, or teacher, or somebody who you think of, and it brings up goodwill, metta quickly and easily. Sometimes we have to do that to help us along in our practice, and then later we go back towards developing to ourselves. But metta is not just a thought, it's a feeling. All the 5 khandhas are being developed with the thought or the object of metta. So there's a perception, a memory of the object of metta. There's thought formations, sankhara khandha. Sense consciousness, maybe you're reducing your distractions by closing your eyes, thinking of the thought of loving kindness, metta, and turning your attention away from feelings, sensations and sounds and other distracting sense impingement. So you limit your sense doors, restrain your sense, practice restraint at your sense doors so you can focus on metta. And with metta there's a pleasant feeling, so even though you may have pain coming up in your body, say you're sitting in meditation, or if you're walking meditation for a while and get tired as you practice your metta, you may have unpleasant physical sensations arise, but you dismiss them, you ignore them basically, keep going to the metta. Just like our mother, getting up in the middle of the night to feed her baby, she'll feel tired, frustrated, fed up, but she'll still do it because of that deep love for the kid, perhaps, just an example. In the same way, we develop this metta, whether we have pain in the body, we're facing obstacles, negative mind states arise as you're doing it. You learn to dismiss them by focusing on the object of metta, and you keep going. Whether you're sitting, you're walking. So all your khandhas, 5 khandhas are involved. If you look at them as like 5 friends, these 5 friends are all aiming towards one task now, supporting each other, coming to the metta. And when you're successful, well, you'll have a feeling, you have a perception, an object of mind, a thought in mind. Everything is focused on the metta. So it becomes stronger, more continuous. So you're mindful of your object of metta, for example. So there'll be mindfulness. You're paying attention to that object rather than thinking of other stuff, paying attention to other things. And so you may achieve some samadhi. The 5 hindrances may fade away and your mind just becomes continuously aware of the object of metta when it's successful. You might say that's your first goal, to do that. When you have metta and your mind is in samadhi, you're mindful of metta from moment to moment to moment. That feeling, that thought, from moment to moment to moment. There won't be any ill will. It's gone temporarily. So if the hindrances have gone, it doesn't matter who you're with, where you are, your metta will be sustained. But of course, if it's fairly weak, you've only attained a little bit of metta, it can be shaken. So maybe you have some metta, you've developed mindfulness of this object of metta for a while. It's there, you're feeling quite good, quite pleasant because of this object. It brings pleasure, brings happiness with it. But then you meet someone you don't like and straight away it can disappear. It's still impermanent. And that's why metta really needs to go on to develop vipassana. You need some vipassana insight into the 3 characteristics to help your metta practice. Because it's impermanent, and you won't have metta all day long unless you've reached jhana and you're like on the level of a Brahma god. And some people do develop that, but not many. Most people develop strong metta for a while, and then that will fade and other thoughts and objects of mind come back in, and it's very easy to go back into anger, so especially if you meet somebody or a situation that tempts you to be angry, your metta disappears. Well, one thing that can help at that point is to reflect on impermanence. Your metta is still what we call a sankhara, a condition of mind. Has its causes, your effort in the meditation maybe, but when those causes change, the metta will fade, it will disappear, and maybe your mind picks up another object and you remember something that makes you angry or annoyed, or makes you fearful perhaps. So your metta will constantly be tested. And one thing that will help preserve metta, keep it there, help you to get back to metta, but also what you can do when you have achieved some metta is then to develop vipassana, insight into the impermanent nature of it, the suffering of it in the fact that metta as an object in itself is not the same as nibbana. Maybe a step towards nibbana, but it's still impermanent, it's still not self. And it arises, passes away. It's still suffering in the sense if you attach to that object, that state of mind, with a sense of self, my metta, this is my feeling of metta, my object, my meditation, then you can suffer because it's impermanent. And you see this happen all the time. Meditators, they attain some good states where the mind has gone calm, let go of the hindrances, there's no ill will, they have metta. Well, then they attach to that with a sense of self, ownership. So they might become disappointed when the state of mind fades, and it will because it's impermanent. So they become disappointed with themselves, or sometimes they blame somebody else. Blame something or somebody for losing their metta. And you see that happen occasionally. Somebody who's had this metta, they're like, very peaceful, been doing their metta meditation quite successfully, but the insight is not yet sharp enough or well developed enough. Somebody comes along, makes a loud noise, disturbs them, in some way or other stops them from meditating or does something that they don't want them to do, and all the metta disappears and suddenly they're back and they become angry again, or just the metta is gone. And they're kind of floundering around a little bit like a fish out of water. They don't know why they're angry or where it's come from or what's going on, because they maybe haven't been developing much vipassana insight as a support for their metta practice. So that's the danger, and we have to develop wisdom or panya from insight meditation with the metta. They go hand in hand, or they're two sides of the practice. We need to develop them together.
So, another question. To practice meditation, can I practice walking and sitting meditation at home every day without any Ajahn to closely teach? I used to learn the 4 foundations of mindfulness at a temple in Thailand before. Some monks said there should be an Ajahn to teach and correct our practice and for our meditative progress.
Yeah, of course you need a teacher, but the teacher doesn't hold your hand and spoon feed you. You have to take what the teacher's instructions are, take them away and practice for yourself. Like you say, do your sitting, your walking at home or wherever you are. But your teacher is there as like a resource. When you need to see the teacher, you go and see them to remind you of things that you've forgotten, to deepen your understanding, explain new things to you or further your understanding. Maybe you've progressed in your practice. So the teacher can help lead you on sometimes, giving you more insight, more understanding of things you've never heard before or never practiced before. So the teacher is an invaluable resource, a necessary thing. But it's not that they have to sit there holding your hand, doing it with you all the time. And indeed, most teachers will at least sometimes send their students away because they have to learn to be independent as well. And an obstacle in the practice sometimes is becoming too clingy or attached to the teacher. So Ajahn Chah, who was a great teacher and very attractive to his students, people wanted to be with him a lot, very nice feeling being with him, lots of wisdom, lots of wise sayings, and lots of mindfulness coming from him that would tend to have a good effect generally on his students. But still, he would also shoo them away and say, go and meditate. Or they come to him with a question. Sometimes he would answer. Sometimes he'd answer in a way they didn't expect or kind of seemingly in an indirect way. But sometimes you say, oh, I'm not here to answer all your questions. You go away and you figure it out yourself. So there's that aspect to the Buddhist practice. It's like you really have to develop your own wisdom and understanding if you're to be enlightened. Ajahn Chah would say, you have to make the wisdom your own wisdom, from your own experience, your own knowledge and experience. But to get to that point, of course, the teacher plays a vital role, and sometimes you need the teacher to remind you or point things out to you that you've lost or forgotten. And when we're not mindful, sometimes the teacher helps guide us back to the path and points out where we're going wrong. But not all the time. You also need to learn to do that for yourself. So Ajahn Chah would say you have to learn to teach yourself to have your own conversation, what we would call wise reflection, or Dhamma Vichaya, or Yoniso Manasikara. You have to learn to have a Dhamma conversation with yourself, give yourself your own Dhamma talk when you need it, to arouse energy when you're lazy, to arouse faith when you're getting lost. You have to go back and remind yourself why you practice, what the purpose is. To give you reminders, say you're getting very attached to the bliss of your metta meditation, as we were just discussing. Maybe you have another voice in your mind that says, oh, be careful, this is impermanent, don't attach too strongly to it because you'll suffer when it fades. All these voices of wisdom, ultimately, you have to develop yourself through your practice. But the teacher helps along the way. So you have a teacher you may refer to. Sometimes you live with them or visit them, and then other times you're away from them, but then you can go back to your teacher. So yeah, of course, most of the time you might not be physically with your teacher. You're at home or in some other place. Even monks in a monastery live with a teacher, but it's not like they're with their teacher all the time. But from time to time, they refer to the teacher, come back, see the teacher, discuss things, receive teachings, and so on. So, that's the attitude to have, I would say. And, when you already reach an impasse, a block, well, then you go back to your teacher. If things are going well, keep going, but learn to teach yourself, learn to bring up the Dhamma in your mind, reflect on it as you're going along through your practice.
Sadhu. Next question. Dear Ajahn, thank you so much for this Dhamma talk. You spoke about putting up the burden and letting things go. I have noticed that the mind keeps being triggered and picks up burdens whenever it is exposed to painful triggers from the outside, such as abuse, unwholesome speech, and hurtful actions from others. Internally, in my meditation, I practice letting go of the fixations with mindfulness, metta. However, would you recommend also to make radical changes externally in our environment, such as ending very difficult relationships, including with family, quitting toxic jobs and situations, so that we stop being triggered again and again, and keep some peace in the outside while developing our mind internally? Thank you.
It's a difficult question to answer in a sort of precise way. Yes, you should quit your job. Yes, you should stop a relationship. Because we're just talking in a very general way here, and I'm not sure of your particular situation. But obviously there are times when it is appropriate to end a relationship that is too painful and causing you too much stress and is just so difficult to deal with that maybe you are better off out of that relationship. So it could be a family member that you see less of, talk to less. Could be a partner that you end up splitting from, maybe. But it's hard to generalize, isn't it? Same with jobs. Every job will have aspects of it that are unpleasant, that trigger you, that make you feel tired, annoyed, fed up, frustrated. Every job will have at least some of that. So you've got to balance it. You've got to work out in that relationship or in that job how much of this is, really unnecessary suffering that I should change and fix and make some adjustments in my life. how much of it is more just normal, and I've got to also learn to put up with it and develop a wise attitude towards it, because many aspects of life are like that, aren't they? You have a body. Nobody, the Buddha didn't say commit suicide, get rid of your body. The Buddha said learn to put up with the pain and discomfort of a human body. It gets tired, it gets ill, it has aches and pains. Be patient with it. Your number one kind of quality to go back to is be patient, endure it, and then learn to see that it's not self. So you don't always get rid of the thing that is triggering you or toxic or making trouble. You can also learn to be patient with it and learn to be mindful of it, let go of your attachment. That's the kind of general goal, but the situations you're in, you have to look at them and say, well, how am I able to do that in this situation? Am I able to do it successfully? Or is it just asking too much, and then maybe you do need to change that situation? So, in some situations, for example, some people say, oh, I just can't live in the lay life anymore. It's too confusing, too disturbing, too difficult. I'm going to become a monk or a nun. But not everyone does that. Not everyone can do that or is able to do that. Some people, they say, oh, I'm going to change my approach. So, like, say you're in a toxic relationship, maybe you haven't tried enough metta yet. You say, oh, I should really try developing a lot more tolerance, metta for this person, better communication. Ask yourself these kind of questions. If you're in a difficult situation with a lot of suffering, ask yourself, what have I done? Have I done enough yet to deal with this situation skillfully? Have I been patient enough? Have I developed enough kindness and compassion for them as well as myself? Have I learnt the things I need to learn? Have I employed the different Dhamma teachings that I need to employ here? Have I done that enough? In which case, if you answer yes, well, okay, you may need to completely change something. But if you answer, maybe I haven't done enough, then maybe you have to try a few more things before you make any drastic change. There's always more we can do, I think. So you have to, I think, get into that habit of asking questions of yourself, reviewing your practice, reviewing the situation. And if you genuinely feel you've reviewed it, you've asked the questions, you've done as much as you can in this situation with the job, with the relationship, with the family, the partner, whatever, well, okay, then maybe you can make a big change because there's nothing else you can do. And sometimes we reach the point where there's nothing else you can do other than get out of the situation or change it. But you have to make that call reflecting on what's going on in your life. And you can't just be idealistic and say it should be like this, it should be like that. It's more, you have to have a practical approach. What can I achieve here? Can I achieve more? Can I do more? Or is it hopeless? Yeah, sometimes things are hopeless and you just say, no, I can't do anything more here. You try and make an objective and a good decision based on what you're reflecting, what you're reviewing in that situation. So sometimes we have to move on.
Sadhu Luang Por. Are there any more questions? That's all the questions, Luang Por.
Okay, well, nice speaking to you tonight, and we wish you well with your Dhamma practice. And we'll be back probably in 2 weeks' time, because next week I'll be in Bodhipala Monastery for an early Magha Puja, one of the Buddhist festivals there, where we remember the teaching of the Ovada Patimokkha, an occasion when all the early arahants in the disciples of the Buddha came together and the Buddha gave this famous teaching. So I'll be in Bodhipala Monastery for that. So we'll be back here, I believe, in 2 weeks' time.